All right, good morning everybody. This is Gary Beck coming to you from the Maximum Wellbeing Thyroid studio, and it's my pleasure to have a special guest here in the studio today. We've got Dr. Daryl Turner. So Dr. Daryl Turner, for those of you that don't know, is the brain behind the creation, the invention of the Thyroflex device that we use in the Thyroid studio. And we feel really privileged to have Dr. Turner here today just to ask a couple of questions and give you guys a little bit more insight into the importance of your thyroid, and in this respect the importance of testing the thyroid properly. So Daryl, thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you very much for inviting me in, Gary. Thyroid is my passion in life, as is autoimmune. And I'd be very happy to share my insights and my experience with yourself and your patients.
Cool. Yeah, it's, the figures are really quite startling. When it comes to thyroid dysfunction, we know that there is a huge percentage out there of undiagnosed thyroid, and that may be both a hypothyroid condition or hyperthyroid. It seems there's thousands of people walking around out there, Daryl, that simply don't know that they have a problem.
Yes, that is correct. According to Broder Barnes and Terry Hertog, the number one and number two thyroid experts in the world, they postulated in their books that 80% of everyone has a thyroid condition. Why? The 80% comes because it is hereditary. You inherit it. And the standard blood test that they do, which is TSH, does not pick it up. In fact, according to the head of the Endocrinology Society from Europe, Sir Dr. Richard Bayliss, he stated a few years ago that that's none, that's NONE, of any of the blood tests are valid. So it doesn't matter what you have circulating in your blood, it is what the body uses that is important. So you can be going to your regular GP, and he will totally miss that because of the bloods that you have a thyroid condition, even though you are symptomatic.
And this is, so the stats tell us that about 18% of the thyroid indication will be given from a blood sample. So you can imagine 18%, that leaves a heck of a lot that's not really addressed or accounted for. And the difference with the Thyroflex device that Dr. Turner invented, it gives us a 98.5% accuracy when we're talking about the functional aspects of the thyroid.
Yes, that is correct. In fact, we've had it on the market for about 20 years. We've tested in the millions now, but hundreds of thousands of people a year now in the 1,000 plus clinics we have around the world. And we have found that what Broder Barnes and what Terry Hertog said, it is about 80% of everyone we test does have a thyroid condition. We're able to identify, as Gary just said, because it's 98.5% accurate, we test the end artifact of thyroid function, the muscles, the skin and the brain. And from that, we can determine if you have a thyroid condition and how much thyroid medication to treat you with. Up until my invention was a total guessing game. We've taken the guessing out of how much thyroid you need.
Yeah, and I guess the nice thing is that with that development of the Thyroflex and the treatment plans that can be accompanying the testing, it means that a lot of people that have been walking around with an undiagnosed thyroid disorder are now able to live their life more fully, which is kind of cool.
Yes, in fact, if your thyroid is undetected or you're undertreated or mistreated, you are more prone to getting the autoimmune diseases, which are Graves', Hashimoto's and Hashimoto's, which is more difficult for us to manage than just treating straight thyroid at an earlier stage.
And we know that these autoimmune conditions unfortunately seem to be gathering pace. There are more people being diagnosed with a variety of autoimmune conditions from what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing, Daryl?
Yes, in fact, it's about 18% of the population in general, except in some countries where it's higher. but it's about 18% of the population who have a thyroid condition, which is 80% of everyone, have an autoimmune response. In other words, their thyroid antibodies are attacking not only the thyroid but other functions within their body. So you end up with digestive problems, you end up with joint effusion. There's a whole cascade of autoimmune responses because of misdiagnosed, undertreated or mistreated hypo or hyperthyroidism.
Yeah, and certainly, these nasty autoimmune conditions are affecting far too many people in our modern day. And then, for me, there's a lot of reasons why that's occurring, but the thyroid function has to be addressed to make sure that the risk factor of developing an autoimmune condition is actually reduced, as Dr. Turner has just stated. But in your experience, Daryl, is there one symptom that really stands out as being a primary thyroid-related symptom? If someone is walking down the road or whatever, is there one that really stands out as being undeniable?
Well, there's a little bit more than one. All I need to do is pick up a person's hand and shake their hand. If the hand's cold, I know that the tip of the nose is cold and their feet are cold, and they think that this is normal. They go through this through their whole lives. Your hands should be very warm, as should your feet and the tip of your nose. But just looking physically, there's a whole lot of physical, like there's hair loss in the crowns. That's very easy to pick up on women, or general hair loss. The outer third of the eyebrows slim down. There are two parallel lines across it that everyone thinks is age, but it's actually from iodine deficiency, which affects the thyroid. And of course the weight gain. So just physically looking at them, if I see the weight gain is between here and the hips, and I know that they have a thyroid disorder, and we can validate that with a simple 4-minute Thyroflex thyroid test.
Yeah, like you say, the symptoms, I guess there are key symptoms that are telltale signs. And I know even when I first met Daryl and we shook hands, my hands were way colder than Dr. Turner's.
But still cold.
Still cold, but not so much difference as there was initially. Daryl, there's one of the things that I see a lot of is that so many people are stressed for whatever reason. Whether it's this crazy year of 2020 or just modern lifestyle, but so many people are stressed, and it seems that we've got a lot of stressed people, and we've got a lot of people with thyroid disorders. Can you successfully treat one without the other?
No, absolutely not. There are two axes that we look at. One is called the thyroid axis, and the other one is called the adrenal axis. And right through from the hypothalamus to the pituitary, through to the thyroid to the adrenal glands, they're all tied in very closely, and they'll talk to each other. If you have a thyroid disorder and you have a stress response on top of that, in other words, you're overstressed, then it affects the thyroid in 3 different levels. It affects it at the pituitary level, the hypothalamus level, and the thyroid level, in a thing called a negative feedback loop. So we must treat the adrenals if you are under or overactive, or if you have Addison's or Cushing's, which is hyper or hyper adrenals, and so you must treat them concurrently. If you don't treat the adrenals, the thyroid will not function properly.
And that certainly makes a lot of sense. We can't get away from the fact that our body is this amazing system of interrelated systems, interconnected systems.
With negative feedback loops.
Exactly, yes. So if it's not coming through, things just can't be initiated at the right level at the right time. So yes, it's a fascinating thing, the human body, and we really need to consider it as a whole. Otherwise we're going to come unstuck. And so, Daryl, you've already mentioned that the Thyroflex device has been tested across thousands and thousands of people, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that initially you did quite an extensive study with quite a large group of people to validate the testing and the treatments. So can you just give us a little bit of insight into exactly what that was?
Sure. I actually invented the Thyroflex machine. I went through many iterations of the machine before I got it right. And I worked out that we had to look at the neurotransmitters speed, the speed at which the brain works, and we actually measure that in milliseconds, because thyroid plays a major trick on the brain. Then I looked at the speed of the reflex, because the reflexes speed up and slow down. This is a well-known scientific fact that hypothyroid people have a fast reflex, hypothyroid people have a slow reflex. That's well documented in the medical literature, and I worked out a way to measure that in milliseconds, and then finally I worked out how to measure the resting metabolic rate. That's how many calories that you burn per day. With those three items, that's the neurotransmitter speeds, the reflex speeds, and the resting metabolic rate, combined with the questionnaire that you fill out, that's the symptoms, which is old-fashioned medicine, where the doctor used to ask you all your symptoms and then treat your symptoms. We then had a machine called a Thyroflex that actually was very, very specific and very, very accurate. I then did clinical trials on 2,200 people, and we tracked them, which is a fairly large group, and we tracked them for 3 years. And we measured everything in their blood because we weren't quite sure what we're about to discover. What we ended up discovering was that the hypo fall within a specific group, the hyper falls within a specific group, and we also were able to identify the autoimmune disorders and reverse T3. That's reverse T3 is an adrenal problem. And during our clinical trials, we accidentally discovered how to treat Hashimoto's, not only how to treat it and put it into remission within a short period of time, but how to cure it. In other words, not only did we cure the autoimmune response from Hashimoto's, but we also were able to clean up the digestive disorders, joint effusion, and all the other autoimmune responses that come along with an autoimmune response.
Yeah, fascinating. And so you heard it there was over 2,000 people in that study, and they were followed for 3 years. So the data that was gathered from that really just shone a light on how effective the testing and the treatment protocols can be. So quite exciting stuff. Now, just going back a little bit there, Daryl, you mentioned that you're testing the neurotransmitter speed, you're testing the reflex speed, and you're testing the resting metabolic rate. Now, for some people, those things will not mean anything, but the resting metabolic rate, this is the thing where the thyroid gland controls the speed of your metabolism. So for all of you people out there that have been struggling with weight loss or trying to lose weight, doing the right diet, doing the exercise, but it just doesn't come off, it is highly likely that your resting metabolic rate is too low. Your body just naturally isn't able to burn those calories that you're wanting to eliminate.
In fact, Gary, I've spoken to so many women who tell me they've been on exercise, they've been on diet, they've been eating correct, they haven't done anything wrong, and they still can't budge the 2 or 3 spare tires they have around the middle. Those 2 or 3 spare tires are caused by thyroid. That's where thyroid stores its weight. And it doesn't matter how much you diet, you'll never be able to budge them, because the basic fact, your resting metabolic rate is 400 calories per day, too low. The average woman should burn 2,250, the average man 2,750 calories per day. If you're hypo, you burn 400 calories or less per day. It's as simple as that, because that is controlled by your thyroid.
Yeah, and I can certainly concur that the results that I've seen with the Thyroflex testing match up exactly with that. Often we'll see this resting metabolic rate, which Dr. Turner's just said should be around 2,200, 250 for a woman. We commonly see them at around 1,700, 1,800 So there you have it. It comes back in the figures. We can see it very clearly. And of course, when we see it, we can then know exactly what needs to be done to help correct it and improve the metabolic rate. So finally, you can actually start to burn away and lose those spare tyres that have been there for too long. I think, Daryl, we'll just wrap up this little chat for today and finish with saying that the nice thing is that with a device such as a Thyroflex, we can see what is commonly unseen by your regular blood tests and your regular doctor visits. So do feel that just because you haven't been told that you have a thyroid function, and in fact you might have been told your thyroid tests are all okay, so you don't have a problem, but you've known in the back of your mind that something isn't quite right.
You have the symptoms.
Yep, you've had the symptoms, you know it, and the symptoms tell a big part of the story. The Thyroflex device may be the answer to opening your eyes a little bit more and giving us the chance to actually correct what hasn't been diagnosed in the past. So with that, I'd like to just finish up with thanking Dr. Turner for coming into the Thyroid studio today. It's been great to have him here, and I hope you have found this really helpful.
Thank you very much, Gary. I just want to add one other thing, is that I'm very passionate about helping people get rid of the hypothyroid blues. All the suffering that you've had to do with foggy thinking, slower thinking, your whole body slows down, constipation, bumping into things. There's a whole list of things that are caused by thyroid, and I'm super passionate about getting people on the right medications, corrected, so they have a good quality of life. This is all about quality of life.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Dr. Turner. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Gary.